All right. So thanks, Clayton, for joining us. So I'm Alexis Waggoner. I'm the Marketing and Digital Education Director for Westar, and I am talking to Clayton Crockett, who is one of our Westar scholars. And Clayton, you're a part of the God Seminar, and that's part of why we're going to chat today, because the God Seminar has this really interesting book coming out called Doing Theology in the Age of Trump, a critical report on Christian nationalism. And so that is an outgrowth of some of the work that you guys have been doing, specifically some of the stuff that came from the fall meeting last year and some of the reports that were read there. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about how this all came to be and what to expect from this book, which will hopefully be out later this fall.
Right. Yeah. So this book comes from the God Seminar, the Seminar on God and the Human Future. And what we've been doing as a seminar, like our main work, has been surveying and engaging with varieties of post-theism. And most of our votes have been sort of rejecting the traditional theistic understandings of God, and then are studying alternate ways of perceiving, thinking, doing religion, theology, philosophy of religion, thinking about divinity in relation to the world, to human beings, culture, society, politics. So we did a kind of a one-off at one of the sessions at our fall meeting last year in 2017 in November in Boston, where it was a critical report on Christian nationalism. And so we had a number of people, about 13 folks at the table, all giving very short presentations and really engaged sort of discussion on this question of Christian nationalism, and in many ways, white Christian nationalism, and thinking about how white Christian American nationalism, exceptionalism, white Christian evangelicals, why they've supported the current administration. And so that the Trump element wasn't exactly to the fore in the panel discussion, but as we put the book together. So Jeffrey Robbins and Jeff is the director of the God Seminar, and we've worked together writing and editing stuff before. So we co-edited the volume, and we have an introduction. We have 16 chapters. Most of the people that were there at the session contributed chapters. A couple other folks also, gave us chapters. And so what we were trying to do is to think about the intersection of religion, of race, and politics in our contemporary world today, under this kind of strange spectacle of a Trump presidency, where even though he doesn't identify as an evangelical Christians supported him about 80%. And so we're trying to figure, what's going on? What does that mean, sort of more broadly for how we think about these things?
Yeah. I imagine it's been really interesting too, as you guys have progressed in the work of the God Seminar, which has been fascinating to see and to watch, like that evolution of language and of how we think and talk about God, and is that word even valuable anymore, and maybe we should do away with it, as you kind of progress further down that road, to then see the opposite end of the spectrum almost further progress in the other direction, right, towards some of the stuff you're talking about, where it seems like in many ways like further rooting in, we commented recently on that statement on social justice in the gospel. I don't know if you saw that came out from like 4,000, I guess, conservative / evangelical / fundamentalist pastors that signed this statement, basically upholding all these kind of hard line tenets of inerrancy, and you can't be a gay Christian, you can't do all this stuff, and kind of like that further entrenchment. Meanwhile, you guys are going off the other direction. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on kind of like how that has been in the fore as you've done this as well, and just the juxtaposition and the dichotomy at the same time of what's going on in these separate spheres.
Right, absolutely. So, I think the political is kind of what connects them in a way, the ways in which these theologies or these understandings of divinity and God and religion intersect with politics, across the whole spectrum. And so one of our arguments is that, all theology is at least implicitly also a kind of political theology. And political theology is one of these important, sort of academic discourses, discussions, conversations today. And so when we're thinking about God, building on what Westar's done with, such extraordinary and important work on biblical studies and historical biblical criticisms, but trying to take head on these, philosophical and theological ideas of God and update that and really open that up, which requires a different methodology than the historical studies, but really is important so that we can, directly take aim at these, we could say idolatrous from a certain perspective, or even just, destructive, anti-human, virulent and hateful definitions and mobilizations of God in our world today. And you're right, and we're going to deal with it. We have a session this coming November at the fall meeting for Westar where we're going to talk about, maybe we should just get rid of the word God if it's being used in such bad and problematic ways. And I think most of the folks in the seminar would kind of resist completely doing away with it. We're saying, well, we need to redefine it. We need to think about it in more complex ways, but it's too easy to just kind of, throw it out. As one of my inspirational influences, Gabrielle Bahanian said, well, God is a word in the dictionary. And so if it's a word, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And what do we do with that? And how does it function? And we're trying to give people tools. Well, we're trying to fashion tools ourselves as scholars, but then we're trying to find avenues and ways to get these tools out to more and more people so that they can reflect and understand and see that maybe it's not such a simple dichotomy or alternative between the traditional theism where God is, inerrant and homophobic and sexist and all these things. And then the alternative would just be, well, if it's not that, then it's just simple atheism, because there's nothing, and then religion. And what I think is the question is not whether God exists or doesn't exist. The question is what that means and how that functions in our world, in our society, and what it means to talk about religion in the world today, which is one of the most vital and most crucial phenomena of anything that's happening, and everything's sort of wrapped up in that. But we need tools to talk about it and think about it.
I think the issue of language and redefinition, all that sort of stuff is always like so fascinating to me because it's been a huge part of my personal, spiritual, educational journey as someone that was raised in an evangelical fundamentalist tradition, and then coming out of that myself and then getting into the academy and kind of feeling like it was that either or, like either I do this business of further entrenching in the ideologies in which I was raised, which I'd already at that point dismissed or come out of whatever, or you just throw it all out. And not necessarily that that's what was being taught, but that was just kind of the sense I had when I came in and was just so overwhelmed with all the redefinition that had already been happening. And then as I got more into it, I realized more like, oh, okay, well, these terms, these beliefs, these things, like they still have, at least, for me and in my training, like still have value. And so how can I rethink them? But then I think that also poses an interesting problem because I think about, the conversations I have with my family or whatever who are still in that culture. And like I can talk their language, but it means something completely different. And so then you have the problem of, well, they might think I actually believe mostly like them because I still use God language. And, there's certain things that I wouldn't say, like I wouldn't say, yes, I agree that scripture is inerrant or whatever. But, I still use certain terms that don't mean the same thing to me that they do to them. And so I think bridging that gap then becomes work as well. Even once you already do the work of the redefinition, then you have the communication problems and so I can see both sides. I can see the wanting to do the redefinition, but also like, no one's going to get it if you do the redefinition. So let's just get rid of it too.
Right. So, I think one of the ways I think about that is that, again, we can't just do away with everything we want to. And we can't just do away with religion. And we certainly can't do it with politics. And so we're forced to use at least shared overlapping languages politically, even if we don't religiously or theologically, with people that we understand the world in very different ways. And I think sometimes we overemphasize that polarization, which is sometimes manufactured, of conservatives and liberals or progressives. I mean, that can be overdone. But the point is that, we still have to talk to people. We still have to talk to people in our community, in our family, in our country, in our world, and we're forced to use at least some shared language in order to talk and communicate. And those words, those concepts and those understandings and definitions are going to be different for different people, but we have to find ways to try to push, through and beyond, even when we feel like the others that we're, talking to don't want to do that, or are retrenching, are sort of fighting and resisting. And so there's two things, it's two prongs as I see it. One is we're trying to diagnose, we're trying to understand what's happening and why. Why is it that white evangelicals are supporting Trump in such large numbers, even though he doesn't identify as a Christian? And then, so understanding that's one. And then two, that communication with folks, at least ones that are willing to ask questions, to reflect, to think about, to engage, to discourse about what's going on and why that's happening. And there's so many, this is what gets lost, I think, in the either or, secular, atheist, conservative, evangelical Christian is progressive Christians, but also progressive Jews and people of other faiths who don't, completely reject, Trumpism and what it represents, but need that religious language, have that or imbued with that and suffused with that religious language, but they're deploying it for progressive political ends. And we need them. We need them as allies, and as resources and as friends and as colleagues. And so to be able to talk, with them and learn from them, as well as help them understand what they're doing and saying politically and religiously, I think is really important and vital for so.
Yeah, I think so. I saw an interesting statistic, I think from the AP. The AP did a poll or something to kind of gets at what the idea that like Trump isn't anything, but like isn't Christian, isn't evangelical, and yet there's still such support. And I'm, that has a ton of reasons, like whatever, tons of other reasons. But one of the interesting things that I saw was like a small percentage, according to this poll, it was like less than 20% of people say that a candidate's belief or strong belief is important to them, that it aligns with their values is not as important to them. And yet in the same poll, there was like over half of people said that having some sort of faith should have some sort of influence in the way that we make policy. And I just thought that was a weird split, because I can definitely see that, I don't think you could really say that if in this world that you're prioritizing someone's religious beliefs, that they be in line with yours, given how so many people have voted. And yet we still have this priority that we place on having that religion has some sort of influence in the public square. And so then I'm like, well, then what does that even look like if the candidates aren't a reflection of our values, and yet we want our Christian or whatever faith values projected into politics? Like, where and how is that happening? And I feel like there's something there with what you guys have been doing too on all of this, on the Theology in the Age of Trump, as well as the work of the God Seminar.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that culture, I think that politics, I think that race is implicit to a lot of these supposedly shared values and shared faiths. And it's not just, Christian evangelicalism, but it's Christian nationalism, because it's this idea of America or the United States as the exceptional nation. And so this idea of making America great again is a theological slogan. It's not just American nationalism, we're a great country, blah, blah, blah. It's also a theological message, because Christianity in the United States, since its inception, and even as an English colony, was always about, this being this new world, this chosen land, this shining city on a hill that represents, the sort of where Christianity needs to go. Yeah. And these get entangled in such a way that even if it doesn't seem like it's explicitly, I'm representing your faith in my theology or in my religious practice, I'm representing your faith in terms of what I'm saying about our country, or in how I'm appealing to a certain form of white nationalism, of white, sort of conservative or even defensive, American outlooks, people that are afraid of the other, the non-whites, the blacks, the browns, the Latinos, the poor, the aliens, all these people that are going to come in and take what's ours, presuming we're, white Christians, Americans, and we're going to lose what is distinctive, and we're going to lose our identity, and we're also, everyone's suffering this kinds of economic crises and declines, and we're given these sort of frameworks and narratives for why that is and who's to blame, and I think Trump feeds into a lot of that.
Yeah.
So
fascinating stuff. So thank you again, unless you have anything to add.
No, just hopefully the book will be out soon before the end of the year, and hopefully people have a chance to get a hold of it and read it, and we're really excited about it, and get this out, and then we're working on the sort of the longer, bigger project on the varieties of post-theism. So,
all exciting stuff, and we'll definitely let people know when the book comes out and kind of like how you guys are progressing. And the seminar discussion at the AARSBL meeting is open to people that are there. It's on Friday, and obviously there's more info about that we can share, but it's the day before it officially starts. But for people that are there early, welcome to stop in. So thanks again, Clayton. I appreciate your insights and great discussion, and look forward to touching base with you again soon.
Great. Thanks, Alexis.
Thanks.